Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Let's continue summative exercise, page 116, question number 11. Okay. Given a curve with the gradient function px squared plus 6x, so underline gradient function of the curve. Okay. So given gradient function of the curve, right? Fx f prime x equal px squared plus 6x, okay, where p is a constant, so p is a constant. Y equals 24x minus 30 is the tangent equation to the curve, so underline y equals 24x minus 30 is the tangent equation to the curve, underline at point 2q. Okay, find question mark the values of p and q. Okay, so first kita boleh nampak keyword dekat sini kita ada gradient function. Okay, you have gradient function. The keyword there, you have gradient function. Okay, so what is a symbol for gradient function? In this case, we use given f prime x to represent your gradient function. Okay, gradient function of the curve. So you kena tahulah what is the usage. Apakah kegunaan gradient function of the curve? We use gradient function of the curve to find gradient of the curve at the given point. Okay, so that's why here you can see you have this equation where it is tangent to the curve. Okay, at point 2q. So maybe, so dia macam ni lah. Okay, maybe so maybe you are the curve, right? So gradient function of the curve is px squared plus 6x. Alright, and then given that, okay, this equation, you have a tangent there. Okay, tangent touch the curve at a point. So the tangent equation is y equals 24x minus 30 and passes through point 2q. Okay, before we answer this question, right, so you must understand apakah kegunaan gradient function of the curve, okay, and what is the relation between gradient of the curve and gradient of tangent to the curve. So, okay, let's say kita tengok konsep dulu sebelum jawab soalan ni, sebab sebenarnya soalan ni taklah susah mana pun. Okay, maknanya you masih lagi tak berapa clear. Okay, so first you kena faham every curve dia ada dia punya nama dia tersendiri. Nama dia adalah, kita guna letter Y. We always use letter Y to represent equation of the curve. Some of the question they use fx. Okay, alright. So let's say this question number 8, okay, sx represent your y. Here dx, okay, the subject of the equation of the curve here, dx is your y. So depends on the question. Normally we use y, okay, and fx normally. So let's say this curve, okay, let's say this curve nama dia adalah, katakan saya letak 3x squared minus 6x plus 1. Itu dia punya nama. Okay, right. Now I'm using y. Okay, alright. Okay, gradient function of the curve. What is gradient function? Gradient function of the curve is dy by dx, the notation. Why is it dy by dx? Because your function right now y in terms of x. Let's say this one. So you can find, since your equation is y in terms of x, right? So you can find dy by dx, where dy by dx represent gradient function of the curve. Okay, so if given to you, if given fx as the equation of the curve, so your gradient function notation is f prime x, first derivative. Okay, first derivative of the function. Okay, so then, okay, if you have tangent to the curve, you must understand, so the tangent to the curve here, alright, you must understand this. gradient of the curve, okay, the gradient of a curve at a point on the curve, let's say at this point, okay, is defined as the gradient of the tangent to the curve at that point. So you kena faham tu. Okay, so katakanlah dekat sini you ada point 2, okay, y, let's say tak tahu y coordinate not given, but actually you can find it what. So how to find the y coordinate? Ni balik kepada konsep asas saja je saya nak explain sebelum you jawab soalan ni. So if you know x coordinate, you can find the y coordinate. How? Since this is the equation of the curve, whatever point lies on the curve satisfying equation of the curve. So given x can find y, given y can find x. So here given x right now is 2. So you can find the y coordinate. So let's find the y coordinate. Just substitute x as 2 because here the point here x is 2. Okay, so let's see what we get. 4 times 3, 12. 12 minus 12, 0. 0 plus 1, 1. So the value of y here is 1. So the point here is actually 2, 1. Okay, since we get the value of y there is 1. Okay, so now next, how to find the gradient? Let's say this is point z. So now next, let's find the gradient of the curve at point z. Gradient of the curve at point z is defined as the gradient of the tangent at the point z here. So this is a tangent to the curve. Why is it tangent? Okay, you can see the line touch the curve at a point. Okay, so this line is known as tangent to this curve. So if you want to find the gradient of the curve, okay, at point z, you need to find the gradient of the tangent to the curve. And how to find the gradient of the tangent to the curve? You can get it from the gradient function of the curve. So that's why, so given to you equation of the curve, right? You can find dy by dx, where dy by dx is actually gradient function of the curve. So multiply index to the front, 2 times 3, 6, copy variable. This one become negative 6. Differentiation of any constant is 0. So you can see every curve has an equation and every curve has gradient function. So this is the gradient function of this curve. Okay, alright. So now, how to find the gradient value? To find the gradient value, always substitute the x coordinate at that point. So here you have x as 2. So when x as 2, the gradient of the curve is given by 6 times 2 minus 6 become 6. Okay, so the gradient of the curve right now, so you must understand this concept. So the gradient of the curve at z is equals to the gradient of tangent at z, that is 6. Ni yang kena faham dulu. So macam mana nak dapat gradient value? Substitute the x coordinate there. So ingat, every curve dia ada dia punya nama dia sendiri, where it is actually y. Equation of the curve, okay, kita selalu guna y sebagai subjek ataupun fx. Okay, and then from y you can find dy by dx, where it is gradient function of the curve. We call it gradient function because it is in terms of x. You can see this one is in terms of x, right? Okay, and then if your equation is fx as the subject, your gradient function is f prime x. Okay, like this question. So this is actually your gradient function, meaning you can find fx, okay, from gradient function of the curve. Okay, sebelum tu, okay, jom tengok lagi satu benda, konsep penting. Okay, so daripada sini pergi ke sini, kita buat proses apa? Differentiation. Betul? Daripada y boleh dapat dy by dx. From y you can find dy by dx. Ataupun kalau you guna fx, you boleh dapat f prime x. Notation saja, benda sama. So you buat proses apa? Differentiation. So, if we have dy by dx, you can find y. So, integrate dy by dx, you akan dapat y, where y is actually equation of the curve. Or, if you have f prime x, integrate f prime x with respect to x. The result is fx. Fx is equation of the curve. Ni satu lagi konsep yang you kena faham. Sebab kita dah belajar integration is the reverse process of differentiation. Reverse. Ni arrow dia ke sana. Okay, ni dia reverse. Terbalik lah arrow dia. Opposite direction. Boleh? Ini konsep penting satu lagi yang you kena faham. So, dalam case ini, soalan ni kata, okay, dia suruh cari P and Q. P and Q tu dekat mana? P kat sini, Q kat sini. So, dalam case ni, kita dah boleh terus dapatkan Q. Okay, sebab kita guna konsep coordinates of a point lying on the line, satisfying equation of the line. Because this point lies on this line. This line is a tangent to the curve. Equation is given. Right? So, now, x is 2, y is q. So, you just substitute, you will get your answer. So, 24 times 2, 48. 48 minus 30 is 18. Q done. Okay, simple je pun. Nampak tak? Kalau tak faham benda ni tadi, tak boleh nak buat lah. So, maknanya kita guna konsep ni tadi. Kalau kita ada x koordinat, kita boleh cari y koordinat. Kan? So, dalam case ni, disebabkan point ni lies on this curve. Since you have equation of the curve, so you substitute into the equation of the curve. But in this case, this point, okay, lies on this line. This is the tangent to the curve, given equation of the tangent to the curve. So, you substitute, since the point lies on this line, so substitute the x coordinate in this equation of the tangent. So, you can find the value of Q there. Okay, next, P. So, you boleh nampak kat sini, you ada prime. Prime maknanya ini adalah gradient function. Dekat soalan pun dah sebut. Okay, f prime x is the gradient function of the curve. So, kita faham tadi, gradient of the curve is defined as gradient tangent of the curve, where how to get gradient of tangent to the curve? Okay, tadi, ingat, ni. Gradient of tangent is dy by dx, ataupun notation lain adalah f prime x. Sama je benda ni, cuma notation saja. Okay, so sekarang ni, dalam case ni, dia dah bagi f prime x. Okay, dan kalau kita tengok daripada from the question, okay, given to you equation of the tangent to the curve. Alright, so you can determine the gradient of tangent. Y equals mx plus c, right? So, the gradient of tangent to the curve is 24. It is 24. Right. So, what is f prime x? F prime x is px squared plus 6x equal 24. Right. And the gradient of the tangent to the curve at this point is 24 if and only if the x is 2 there. Okay, so when x is 2, the gradient of the tangent is 24. Right, syarat dia, gradient tu adalah nilai dia 24 sekiranya x tu adalah the value of x is 2. So, ganti x sebagai 2. So, you can find the value of P right now. 2 squared 4. 4P plus 6 times 2, 12. So, P is 24 minus 12. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So, you get the value of P already. So, done. Okay, once again. Okay, kita ada tangent tadi. This is equation. So from here, this is the value of the gradient of the tangent to the curve. Where you understand gradient of tangent is dy by dx, but in this case we use f prime x to represent first derivative of the curve, that is gradient function of the curve. So f prime x is 24, so that's why, okay, f prime x is so at this point point 2q. So dekat sini gradient of the tangent is 24. Okay, kat mana-mana titik pun sama. Disebabkan dia dah bagi dekat titik 2q, so you just substitute x as 2. Then you will get your answer. Okay, done.